merit and demerits of the projects, as is being belabored by the other members. It is the constitutionality, Mr. Speaker, and going by the book. And Mr. Speaker, as we talk about Article 2.3, it must be read alongside the PFM Act, Section 43(2)(c), that says that presupposes that supplementary is comprised of reallocation within either lead to increase or deductions across various items and programs. The rule, therefore, Mr. Speaker, requires that we look at this issue in terms of the specific programs and not broadly on the 10%. But also, Mr. Speaker, as you have correctly guided and you have correctly stated by reading, Mr. Speaker, these reallocations and spendings on 223 cannot be blanket, Mr. Speaker. Have to be on items and especially that are unforeseen. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, if we leave it bare, then we give the national government a blanket check to spend over 300 billion, and especially referencing on the current budget, and we cannot afford to give the national government a specific blanket check of 300 billion to spend either way. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I'm just drawing the attention of members not to go on the merits of Maraba Road or whichever other project. They are all good projects, but we are a house of rules, and the government must always be guided by the Constitution and the other relevant rules, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Emuhaya.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity. And having keenly followed the submissions of Honorable Nduale, where I find that both the chair of budget and even the leader of majority should have actually concentrated, and we really need to deal with, and even when you retire possibly to make a ruling, you should look at 223 in terms of the timelines that it's expected to be followed when the parliament is on, which has been stated very clearly, vis-a-vis what the submissions of Nduale gave, and if the parliament is in recess, the 2 weeks, in accordance with what Honorable Nduale did state. I think that's where the rubber will meet the road. And therefore, that's what we need to address, and if that's addressed, then we should be able to make a very good ruling that will actually make us move forward in the correct way. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Member for Tharaka.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, 223 of the Constitution is very clear. The circumstances under which the Treasury or the Executive can spend unappropriated sums of money. The specific areas are set therein. And unfortunately, what is being brought to the attention of the House is that some of the programs on which this money was spent actually are not envisaged by 223. And that specifically is an illegality. And this is why we are seeking guidance from the chair to confirm that what the Treasury has done is an illegality, and we are not going to stamp it. We actually declare it so because what is easy is to declare what is illegal as illegal than trying to legalize what is illegal. This money that was spent in the projects that have been enumerated is money which we have actually been seeking from the government, and we are told there is no money. We have to wait for supplementary budget. I have actually been going to the government ministries to try and fund some of the projects in Tharaka, but I'm told you have to wait, including boreholes, which I'm told some of the members of parliament were given up to 20. I have been told for the 5 allocated to me, there is no money, I have to wait. Absolutely, because what is being done is not lawful. Because if it were lawful, we would have all debated to know where these monies are available, where we can go and get the money for purposes of our own development. What we ask you kindly to do is to declare what is illegal, illegal, so that we can move on from there instead of trying to sanitize an illegality, whether clothed in the arguments raised by the leader of majority or in whichever manner. So kindly do guide us so that we can move on. Thank you very much.
Member for Uriri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to also weigh in on this very serious matter that Honorable Duale brought in to the attention of the House last week, I think, and he has raised it again today. Whereas I completely associate myself with what the Majority Leader, Honorable Amos Kibunya, has said, Mr. Speaker, it is important that Honorable Duale must learn to speak with one voice and not speak from both sides. I have had the privilege to be in this committee over the last 5 years. Some of the issues that he has raised, Mr. Speaker, are not new, and they have been ferociously defended by the Majority Leader in this very House, the former Majority Leader, Honorable Aden Duale. It is not the first time that we have varied programs by in excess of 10%. It has actually happened, and even as you retreat to look into it, we will equally dig into the archives, including what the Hansard has said, what Honorable Duale did submit here in this particular House. Number two, Mr. Speaker, whenever there is expenditure under Article 223, and I remember this issue came up in the committee, we did ask Treasury to provide certain documentation. One, evidence of disbursement, because it is only then that you know that that money has actually left the coffers to wherever it is actually being expended. Mr. Speaker, I speak to this because at some point, we did pass here, we almost passed under, in a supplementary budget, when we got an indication that certain approvals had been, certain monies had been expended under Article 223. But when the departmental committees went in to interrogate, and I remember that time it was about 530 million in a committee that I sit in. When we interrogated the ministry, they said the actual money hadn't left. So what I would probably also urge my chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee is, in accompanying the documentation that has been tabled on the floor, is to give the supporting documentation. Then we will be able to actually look at the timelines, look at the time that Parliament came back, then we can be able to make that decision. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, we must also then appreciate that over the last maybe 2 to 3 years, things have been very difficult, not only in this House, but also in this country. And certain interventions probably are unforeseen in whichever way, and the law allows it, including the overall expenditure that he's talking about. So I actually ask that, Mr. Speaker, what we are seeing, and I think what Honorable Duale is trying to do, is to just delay the process. And I want to say the whole government is at a standstill, including this House, and that you, I'm sure from where you sit, you have, and you experience, Mr. Speaker, you don't need to essentially retreat. You can actually make a ruling so that we can make progress and discuss into, begin discussion on substantive issues. I submit, Mr. Speaker.
You know, he just made an allegation, which he just said that maybe you want to delay.
Mr. Speaker, I have raised serious issues. And Mr. Speaker, Honorable Nyamita, unfortunately, your people are watching you. You are too pedestrian. Your argument is pedestrian. It is village talk. The issues, you must reply to it.
Now,
point of order, Mr. Speaker. I think it is uncalled for and unparliamentary for Duale to utter such words in this House when he's been a leader on the House. And I want to call on you to ask him to withdraw and profusely apologize to me, because I speak from a very great point of information. And for your information, Honorable Duale, I am a fairly, very well-schooled individual, and I'm talking from a point of information. So I ask that you direct that he withdraws and profusely apologizes to me And he knows why. Shame on you, Duale.
Now, members, you are making it worse. If everybody gets a chance and he throws now. No. Let's not. Nobody should be should be ashamed, but the House should feel that they are reducing themselves to very low levels. It's only fair that I think at all times, even when we're in the House, we remember that we have obligations under Article 73 of the Constitution to uphold dignity of the office that you hold, that you are elected to. So by making certain utterances and behaving in certain ways, including doing some funny jigs, you could be lowering the office that you've been elected to. So please, I'm just saying this because it has become very fashionable these days for people to do all manner of acrobatics, and some of it is not very good. They are very young kids who watch what you do. And just this morning in some discussion that I was having, I was being asked whether members are aware that they are watched by small children. And some of them grow up thinking that some of the things that they hear you say or do, which are really not what you are elected to do or to be, are what they should aspire to grow to be. I think that let's just be respectful to one another. Sometimes you may not like what I may say, but just allow me to say it, then you can controvert. There's no harm in you giving some other figures different from the ones that the Honorable Jared Okello may give, and Honorable Sankokwe is the next on the line. If you say something that somebody doesn't quite agree, but please don't say something. Don't be personal to anybody. Just address the issue.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, before even I go to the issues that have been raised by His Excellency Aden Duale, what Honorable Nyamita had said, he had insinuated that his house had broken rules